Welcome to EchoTales Audio. This audiobook invites you into a world of shadows and suspicion. The Mystery of Hunter's Lodge. A classic mystery by Agatha Christie awaits, where every silence holds a secret and every detail could be a clue. Part 1. After all, it is not every day that a murder is committed, and the circumstances of this one were particularly unusual. I had been spending a few days with a friend, John Cavendish, at his place in the country, when I received a telegram from my friend Poirot, requesting my immediate presence in London. Business of a confidential nature, it said. I arrived to find him prostrate in his armchair with a severe attack of influenza. "My friend," he murmured faintly, "you have come in the nick of time. Hastings, you shall go to Derbyshire for me. After all, I cannot be in two places at once." I was not enthusiastic. "What's the case?" I asked. He waved his hand feebly. "Nothing much. A murder at a place called Hunter's Lodge. I am not in a position to go myself. You, Hastings, shall represent me." I tried to look dignified and competent. "You can depend on me," I said, "though I wish I knew what it was all about." Poirot motioned wearily to the table beside him. "There you will find all the details. The victim is Mr. Harrington Pace, a rich American who was staying in the lodge with his nephew and niece. The local police are quite competent, but the niece, Miss Zoe Havering, sent for me. Here is her telegram." I picked it up and read, "Please come at once. Uncle Harrington murdered last night. Inquest tomorrow. Come by train to Elmersdale. Bring good man if you cannot come yourself. Zoe Havering." "There is also a note from Mr. Roger Havering, her husband," added Poirot. "He urges us to investigate discreetly." I nodded. "All right. I'll catch the afternoon train." I left London that afternoon, and after a journey of some hours, I arrived at the small station of Elmersdale, where I was met by a neatly dressed chauffeur. He informed me that Mrs. Havering had sent the motor to meet me, and that it was a 7-mile drive to Hunter's Lodge. It was already dark when we arrived. The lodge was a low, rambling stone building, situated on the edge of the moor. A maid opened the door and ushered me into a small drawing room, warm and cozy, with a fire blazing in the grate. In a few minutes, Mrs. Zoe Havering entered. She was a tall, slender woman, with a wealth of auburn hair and vivid coloring. Her manner was haughty and assured. "You are Monsieur Poirot's assistant?" she asked, and when I nodded, she continued, "My husband will be here shortly. He had to go to London on business. In the meantime, I can give you all the facts." She sat down, and I took out my notebook. "My uncle, Mr. Harrington Pace, was staying with us at the lodge for a few days. He was not very well and wanted complete quiet. On the night in question, my husband was away. He had gone up to town that morning. About 10 o'clock, I went to bed. I left my uncle sitting by the fire in the gun room. He often sat up late reading. The servants were all in bed by that time, except the butler, Graves, who sleeps in the house. At 11:30, I was awakened by a shot. I ran downstairs and found my uncle lying in a heap on the floor. He had been shot through the head. The French window was open, and I thought I saw someone running across the lawn. Graves had heard nothing. I telephoned for the police at once. That is all I can tell you." "What was your uncle's attitude toward your husband?" I asked. "Oh, they were quite friendly. My uncle was a peculiar man. He had a great dislike of strangers and never went about much in society." "Was the French window bolted when you went to bed?" "I think not. We often left it open on warm nights. But it is a private place. No one would be likely to come near the house." At this moment, a tall, fair man entered the room. "This is my husband, Captain Havering," said Mrs. Havering. He bowed and shook hands. "I'm sorry I wasn't here when you arrived. I came straight down from London as soon as I got the wire. I understand you are acting for M. Poirot." "Quite so. Now, what can we tell you?" "I think your wife has given me all the main facts," I replied. "Perhaps you can tell me exactly what occurred when you arrived home this evening?" "Certainly. I came in about half an hour ago and was surprised to find the house in confusion and the police in possession. They told me what had happened, and that Mrs. Havering had sent for Poirot. I'm only too glad. The whole thing is so inexplicable. It's incredible to think anyone would want to harm old Pace. Was the window open when you returned? Yes. The police have left everything exactly as it was. You would like to see the room? If you please. He led the way, and I followed him down a long passage. At the end was a door which he opened. We entered the gun room. A big easy chair was drawn up to the fire, and opposite it was a writing table. In the chair was a book, face downwards, and on the floor near it a revolver. The police have taken the body away, explained Captain Havering. I see, I said. Where did the shot enter? Just here, he pointed to the back of the chair. The bullet went straight through the head and embedded itself in the wall opposite. Have you moved anything? Nothing has been touched. I understand the revolver belongs to your wife. Yes. She kept it in that drawer. She took it out once or twice to frighten tramps or poachers. Have you any idea what time the murder was committed? Well, Mrs. Havering heard the shot about 11:30, but the doctor thinks he had been dead nearly half an hour before that. I said. Then that would bring it to 11 o'clock. I turned to Captain Havering. Your journey to London was entirely in connection with this business scheme of yours? Yes. I had an appointment in the city with a man called McNeil at 12 o'clock. I caught the 9:40 from Elmersdale and arrived at St. Pancras at 1:10. What time did you leave London again? I returned by the 6:15 from Street Pancras, which gets to Elmersdale about 9:40. And you didn't leave the station? No. I found the motor waiting and came straight home. At this moment the door opened and a police inspector entered the room. He introduced himself as Inspector Japp from Scotland Yard. Mr. Poirot is laid up, I hear, he said with a smile. Well, I dare say we can do without him. This is Mr. Hastings, his assistant. Glad to meet you. I've been over the ground already, but I'll go through it again for your benefit. He paused and then added, First of all, no footprints outside the window. Ground hard as iron. Window was open and unlatched, so entrance or exit that way is quite possible. Revolver belonged to the lady, prints all blurred. Someone had evidently tried to wipe them off. There was oil on the weapon and only one shot fired. Any other weapons missing? I asked. No, the rest are all in the rack. Now, as to the butler, Graves. What's his account? He says he was in bed and heard nothing. Claims he slept right through it. You don't believe him? I don't say that. But it's odd. Sound carries well in these country houses. Where is he now? In the pantry. Would you like to see him? If you please. Inspector Japp rang the bell, and a few moments later a man entered. He was quiet and respectful, with a deferential manner. This is Graves, said Japp briefly. Now then, Graves, this gentleman wants to hear your story. The man bowed slightly. I was just going up to bed, sir, when Mrs. Havering spoke to me from the landing, saying she heard a shot in the gun room and telling me to go down. I went at once and found Mr. Pace lying just as he was found by the police. I saw no one, sir, nor did I hear anything. What time was this? Just after 11:30, sir. You didn't hear the shot? No, sir. I sleep very soundly. And you saw no one before or after? No, sir. I eyed him narrowly. He bore my scrutiny well. You had all gone to bed when Captain Havering left in the morning? Yes, sir. That is to say, I saw him off from the door myself, but the other servants were not up. And you are sure he did not return during the day? Quite sure, sir. Thank you. As the man left the room, I turned to Japp. What do you think? I'm not sure, he replied. It's a queer case. There's no sign of robbery, nothing touched and no motive. But we'll see. I've got my men working on a few leads. I nodded slowly. Something about the case was beginning to trouble me. But what? Part 2. After breakfast the following morning, I went out for a stroll. The day was fine, though somewhat cold, and I wanted to get the scene of the crime clearly into my mind. The little spinney where the body had been discovered was about 100 yards from the house. A small path led into it, and about halfway through, the undergrowth thickened. I found the exact spot easily enough. The bushes were still trampled down. I turned and followed the path in the direction the supposed murderer would have taken in his flight. It brought me out by the drive gate, and I noted that a side path ran up to the house. I continued my walk. The whole place was very deserted, and I saw no one until I came upon a small boy tending a flock of geese. He informed me that he was the son of the lodgekeeper, and the only person about the place during the day. I questioned him closely, but he seemed to know nothing. He had seen Captain Havering go out that morning and return by the 9:40 train the same evening. No strangers had been near the house. The boy was positive of that. As I came back to the house, a telegraph boy passed me. He ran up the steps and rang the bell. I quickened my pace and entered the hall as the maid was taking the telegram from him. "Just a minute," I said. "Is that for me?" "Mr. Hastings?" she asked. I nodded, and she handed it to me. I tore it open. "Don't do anything. I'm coming down myself." "Poirot." I raised my eyebrows. What could be the meaning of this sudden resolve? At any rate, I was glad. Things were going nowhere, and a fresh brain was needed. I was at the station at 12:30 the following day to meet the train, and a few moments later Poirot alighted, neat and smiling, and entirely his old self once more. I eyed him keenly. "You look in a pretty good shape, considering you had influenza," I remarked. "Bah! It was of the most mild. The good Jap, he should stick to crime, not to the healing art. I am restored, as you see. And I am here. Eh bien, mon ami, what is the situation?" I gave him a brief resume of all that had occurred. He nodded. "Good. Let us proceed to the house. I am all impatience." We were greeted with some surprise by the Haverings. Poirot explained that he had recovered and was anxious to lose no time in investigating the case. "We must make a start at once," he declared. "If you will permit me, madam, we will examine the gun room." "Certainly," said Mrs. Havering. "Graves will attend you." The butler was summoned, and together we entered the scene of the crime. Poirot examined everything with the closest attention. He did not, however, touch the revolver, but asked to have it left where it was. Then he examined the French window, and finally the armchair where the dead man had sat. Suddenly he bent over it. "Aha!" he said. "What have we here?" He pointed to a small hole in the side of the armchair, a clean, round hole, such as might be made by the point of a stiletto. "There's a similar hole in the back," said Poirot, "and one underneath the arm. Curious, very curious." He straightened himself. "I would like to see the other servants," he said. Graves was summoned and appeared with a respectful demeanor. Poirot gave him a quick, appraising glance. "You were the only male servant in the house?" "Yes, sir." "And you have been with Captain Havering long?" "About a year, sir." "I was with Lord Edgware before that." "You attended to Mr. Pace during his stay here?" "Yes, sir." "What kind of man was he?" "A very quiet gentleman, sir, not what you'd call easy to please, sir, but generous with tips." Poirot nodded. "Was this chair, the one in which he sat, always placed in the same position?" "Exactly so." The butler looked at it doubtfully. "No, sir, I think it stood a little more to the right. Yes, I'm sure it did." Poirot made a note of that. "One more thing, who dusted the room yesterday?" "I did, sir." "You remember seeing this hole in the arm of the chair?" "No, sir, I'm sure there was nothing there yesterday." Poirot nodded again and dismissed him. When Graves had gone, he turned to me with a curious smile. "You see, Hastings? It is as I thought. Now, I would like to see the pantry." We followed him there. On a shelf was a row of plates, and on one of them was a smear of dried egg. Poirot examined it with interest. "Now, my friend," he said, "I would like to examine the ground outside the window." We went out through the French window and followed the line of the gravel walk. The ground was hard and dry, and not a trace of a footprint was visible. Poirot went on until we came to a small summer house. "Eh bien, Hastings, a curious little case, n'est-ce pas? Let us return to the house. I must have a few words with the good inspector." Jap was in the drawing-room. "Ah, my good Jap, you have arrived in time. I have been making a little investigation of my own." "And what have you found?" asked the inspector, smiling. Poirot sat down and straightened a cushion with a dissatisfied air. "A number of interesting things," he replied. For example, that the chair in which Mr. Pace was sitting when he was shot has been moved, perhaps several times. That there is a small hole in the side of it, and another in the back, and one underneath the arm. What do you make of that? I think, said Poirot, that someone may have tampered with the chair. He leaned forward. My friend Hastings and I are going back to London this afternoon. There is nothing more to be done here. What? You heard me. The case is finished. Japp stared. But the murderer? I know who the murderer is. You know. But we haven't a shred of evidence. Poirot smiled. I do not need evidence. I know. Part 3. We traveled back to London that afternoon, and Poirot was silent and thoughtful the whole way. I could get nothing out of him. The following morning, however, he was in high good humor. We must hustle, my friend, he declared. Hustle. The order of the day is speed, decision, rapidity. He went out, and I heard him telephoning busily for some time. In about half an hour, he put his head in at the door and requested me to accompany him. We are going to call upon Mr. Pace's solicitors. His affairs were evidently left in perfect order, and the solicitors are in possession of full instructions. We visited the offices of Messrs. Pulling, Wheatley, and Wayne, and the senior partner, Mr. Pulling, received us immediately. Yes, Mr. Pace was a client of ours, he said. His affairs were in perfect order, very methodical man. Had you any special inquiry to make? Perhaps you can tell me what arrangements Mr. Pace made as to the disposal of his property in the event of his death? Certainly. By his will, he left everything to his niece, Mrs. Roger Havering. Ah! Poirot nodded. I take it that there is no doubt about the will? None whatever. It was drawn up by us, and is perfectly straightforward and regular. Signed in the presence of witnesses? 2 witnesses, a maid and the butler in his London house. Thank you, Mr. Pulling. One more question. Did Mr. Pace ever mention his having had a brother, or any near relative, who might have been supposed to have a claim on him? No. On the contrary, he was a lonely man, without kin of any kind. I thank you. Good morning. Rather disappointing, I remarked when we were outside again. On the contrary, declared Poirot, it was profoundly illuminating. Now I propose that we make a call on Lord Edgware. I followed him, somewhat amused. The noble lord, a small man with sharp, bird-like features, received us at once. Excuse me, said Poirot politely, but you are Lord Edgware? I am. What can I do for you? Perhaps you can tell me something about your former butler, Graves? Graves? I don't know where he is. He left me nearly a year ago. I am aware of that, but I should like to know what you thought of him. Was he satisfactory? Perfectly. An excellent servant. Poirot hesitated, then said, I should like a word with your lordship in private. I rose to go, but Lord Edgware waved me back. You may speak freely. There is nothing I have to conceal. As you will. Then I will ask you if you found Graves perfectly honest. A faint smile crossed Lord Edgware's face. Not entirely. He was a thief. No. But he appropriated things, yes. What things? Clothes. He had a mania for dressing up. Used to take my clothes and disguise himself as me. A crazy idea. Poirot smiled and rose. I am obliged to you, Lord Edgware. Your information is most valuable. When we emerged onto the street, Poirot was beaming. You see, Hastings, all is running like clockwork. I was right in my idea. And now, he hailed a taxi. We returned to Elmersdale. Do you know who the murderer is? I asked as we sped along in the cab. I do. But you have no proof. Not yet, but I shall have. Ah, mon ami, you do not know the thrill of the chase. We returned to Elmersdale by the afternoon train. Once back at the lodge, Poirot lost no time. He called for Graves. My good Graves, I am very pleased with you. You have rendered me a great service. You shall not be forgotten. The butler looked bewildered. You are mistaken, sir, indeed you are. I have done nothing at all. Poirot smiled gently. We shall see. In the meantime, we shall all dine together here this evening. Be so good, Graves, as to inform Mrs. Havering that I have requested this. Graves departed, his face a study in bewilderment. Poirot chuckled. The poor fellow is quite at sea, yet he is a most valuable assistant. That evening, we assembled in the dining room, Mrs. Havering, her husband, Jap, and ourselves. Poirot was in great spirits, but he refused to discuss the case. "Wait, my good Jap, wait! The end approaches." The meal concluded, Poirot glanced around the table. "Now, Messrs. E.T. Madam, I will ask you to accompany me to the gun-room. The scene of the crime is always interesting." We all rose and followed him. The gun-room was cold and shadowy in the evening light. Poirot stood by the armchair. "The criminal scheme," he said, "was exceedingly ingenious. I made a mistake, I admit, I was taken in. But I have now pierced the deception. The person who shot Mr. Pace was," he paused, "the supposed Captain Havering." There was a stunned silence. "Ridiculous," cried the real Captain Havering. "I was miles away." "Precisely, monsieur. But the murderer, by clever disguise, passed himself off as you. Graves, the butler, can corroborate this." "I cannot," exclaimed Graves, startled. "But you can, my good Graves. Lord Edgware has told me all about your little weakness for disguise. It was you who shot Mr. Pace. Disguised as your master, you were admitted by the maid, who had been deceived into believing you were Captain Havering himself." Graves collapsed into a chair. "It's true," he murmured. "I did it, he tempted me. He offered me money, then insulted me. I lost my head." Poirot nodded. "I suspected you from the first, Graves. But I needed proof." Graves sat hunched, his face buried in his hands. The room was still as death. Poirot continued. "I realized the trick when I examined the chair and discovered the small holes. Graves had prepared the chair by boring holes through it in 3 places. Then he ran thin, invisible wires through these holes, connecting to a revolver fixed behind the chair. When Mr. Pace sat down, all Graves had to do was pull the wires from the pantry next door, firing the revolver without being present in the room. That is why no footprints led to the French window." Inspector Japp looked at Graves grimly. "So that's how you did it? And you thought to get away by dressing up as the captain?" Graves nodded weakly. "I didn't mean to kill him at first, but then he provoked me. I planned it all in a moment of madness." Poirot turned to Japp. "You have your man, my friend." Japp snapped his fingers. "Right, come along, Graves." Graves rose, a broken man, and was led away. Poirot smiled gently. "You see, Hastings, the armchair told me the tale. Always pay attention to the details, they speak, if only one has the wit to listen." Part 4. On the train back to London, Poirot was unusually silent, his fingertips pressed together, eyes half closed in thought. I broke the silence. "You suspected Graves from the start, didn't you, Poirot?" He nodded slowly. Certain details Hastings spoke too clearly to be ignored. The maid's certainty that she had admitted Captain Havering, yet the real captain was far away. That was the first clue. Then the butler's past, his peculiar fondness for disguise as Lord Edgware revealed, provided the key. The moment I knew that, the rest followed like clockwork. "But the chair, and the wires?" I prompted. The cleverness lay there. Graves, while dusting the gun-room, had rigged the revolver behind the chair, using thin wires passing through the drilled holes. By pulling from the pantry, he fired the shot unseen, the perfect illusion of a sudden murder. But what was Graves' motive? He was a servant. Why kill Mr. Pace? Poirot smiled gently. "Greed, mon ami. Mr. Pace was a wealthy man, and there was talk of money exchanged, perhaps promises made and broken. But above all, it was the ease of opportunity. Graves saw his chance, prepared the device, and took advantage of his former employer's habits. He knew Mr. Pace's will favored Mrs. Havering, and thought the blame might drift toward Captain Havering, away from himself. But alas for him, he underestimated Hercule Poirot." I chuckled. "He certainly did. But still, what of Mrs. Havering and her husband?" Poirot's eyes twinkled. "They remain under the shadow of suspicion, perhaps, yet no evidence links them directly to the crime. Sometimes Hastings' justice is not always perfect, but the truth, that at least we have uncovered." We reached London by evening. Poirot stepped off the train, his posture erect, adjusting his bowler hat with precision. You see, Hastings, a little order and method, and the gray cells, they never fail. I laughed. They certainly didn't this time, old chap. We walked away from the platform, the city lights beginning to glow, as if the fog of mystery had lifted with our arrival. Once again, Poirot had unraveled deception with his brilliance, and I was reminded that no puzzle, however intricate, could escape the mind of Hercule Poirot. Thank you for listening to EchoTales audio. We hope you enjoyed this classic mystery, The Mystery of Hunter's Lodge, by Agatha Christie. If you enjoyed this audiobook, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more thrilling mysteries and timeless stories.